Game-time decisions live right here on SportsGrid. I'm Kevin Walsh with you for the next 2 hours as we make it happen on a Tuesday night with a lot to get to. The college basketball board expanding quite a bit from yesterday where we only had one game featuring ranked basketball teams, but it was a good one. We'll talk about that in a moment. The hockey board started way early today. Packed slate. Joe Madden will be here in 10 minutes to help us break that down. And there's a lot for us to break down as well in the football world, some NFL quarterback news, and the confirmation of the college football playoffs upcoming format. We will break that down all for you here over these next 2 hours. Let's open it up, though, and we'll start with the national championship odds for college basketball. We mentioned last night the ranked game, a pair of top 10 teams in Houston and Iowa State taking battle. Now, you'll see within their national championship prices, there is still a comfortable gap. Iowa State down here at 20-1. Houston checks in at 9-1. It was the Cougars getting the win in that basketball game. However, no cover, and it just still shows that Houston can obviously handle these games, but maybe not as dominant as, again, relative to a spread. I'm perhaps inflating here a bit, as it was an 8-point win on an 8.5-point line. Point still stands, though. That was a nice cover for Cyclones backers. The big boost for Houston in that is the separation it created in the odds for the Big 12 regular season championship, which will go a long way to keeping the Cougs on the one line. Right now, if you look through a lot of the projected brackets, you're getting a unanimous 1, 2, 3, 4 as the one seeds in the tournament. And we're going to talk about UConn in a moment as they are in action tonight. But let's bring our radio audience into the fold here. Sirius XM, Channel 159. Appreciate all those stopping by here on this Tuesday night with Game Time Decisions. I'm Kevin Walsh. UConn plays in tonight's big matchup. We have some ranked action, but UConn and Creighton is the main event. The Huskies are on a 14-game winning streak. They are the unanimous number one team in college basketball as voted on by the AP poll. And they're a 3.5-point favorite at Creighton, who still ranks inside the top 15 in college basketball. The tough spot here, though, for UConn is the fact that this team is coming off of such a dominant win against Marquette. Can they do it again? It is tough to ask any team to step up in the way that UConn is being tasked with in back-to-back games. Other ranked matchup here comes from the Big 12. That is number 11 Baylor at number 25 BYU. The Cougars at home are a 4.5-point favorite over the Baylor Bears. There's some late-night WCC action here with St. Mary's up against the Dons, a 6.5-point favorite. San Diego State is a road dog despite being the ranked team against Utah State. The last time these teams played, Utah State was ranked inside the top 20, lost that basketball game by 14. You've got Texas Tech and TCU, and then this Tennessee-Missouri game is the early start as far as ranked action goes. The rest of this is 8:30 or later, so there's a lot of good action there in the college basketball landscape here. But I want to stick with college sports and move over to the college football world. We're going to spend some time on this tonight because I think it's appropriate. We finally have the formation and the format that we're going to get from the college football playoff. And what we have here is a projected look through the eyes of the national championship market of what the upcoming playoffs will look like. Now, this was done by our guy, Ben Stevens here. And the format of 5+7 is 5 automatic bids for the 5 highest ranking conference champions. It was initially going to be 6, but we lost the Pac-12. How this is likely to break out 9 of every 10 years is the Power 4 conferences, SEC, Big 10, ACC, Big 12, will occupy these 4 spots, getting buys, and then you're going to see a mid-major, probably is the 12, but somewhere in this at-large round number 1 grouping, and it makes for an interesting format, but it also starts to beg the question, where is the value? Then when we look at the national championship markets and some of the takeaways and I think pieces that we will start to really see develop here, we'll dive into this at the top of our number 2. But some other football news, Justin Fields in the news today. Justin Fields unfollowing the Chicago Bears on Instagram, following Kyle Pitts, Bijan Robinson, Drake London, all, of course, members of the Atlanta Falcons. Minus 130. The Atlanta Falcons are, this is available on the DraftKings Sportsbook, to be the next team for Justin Fields. And you'll notice the Bears are on this list. I just want to make this point because we haven't gone through these markets much. Obviously, we just really entered the NFL offseason. But at times, these markets will exist with the current team, the incumbent, not on the board, because then there would be booked as a heavy favorite, right? The fact that the Bears are not only on this list, but back at plus 750, it lets you know that the market is not expecting the Chicago Bears to retain Justin Fields, which is a key starting point to this conversation. And if the Atlanta Falcons are going to be the team, the next big question is, what is it going to cost the Atlanta Falcons to acquire Justin Fields? Is it a first-round pick? Is it multiple first-round picks? Is it a swath of seconds and thirds and future draft selections of that caliber? These are the questions that we're going to have to figure out here, but it's also going to then really determine who else enters this race. The Pittsburgh Steelers here at plus 350, you can kind of see tiered off on their own. I think if you were to really look at this, Falcons by themselves, Steelers by themselves, and then this kind of middle group here of the Pats, the Bears, the Broncos, the Commanders, and the Vegas Raiders would be that next tier of NFL teams that could potentially be suiting Justin Fields. One more piece of news, though, that I think can all start to figure out. If the Bears trade Justin Fields, we know Caleb Williams is going to go number 1 overall to the Chicago Bears. You could say, well, what if they start to love Jaden Daniels? What if they start to love Drake May? We are approaching the combine. We are approaching the point of the calendar where maybe some of those conversations will start. But the odds have been so heavily in favor of Caleb Williams. I do think it would be quite surprising for any team to take the risk to draft first overall and not select Caleb Williams. And if the Bears trade Justin Fields and stay pat at number 1, which would be the expectation, then you can lock in Caleb Williams as the number 1 overall pick and get rid of any idea that there could be some wildness that plays out with that first overall selection, or a team swoops in, Commanders, potentially the New England Patriots selecting 2nd and 3rd in this draft. Let's go over to a quick pick here, the college basketball board. A game that does not feature a ranked team is Wisconsin-Maryland, despite the fact that Wisconsin is certainly one of the 25 best teams in college basketball. This, though, is the nature of the AP poll. And this Wisconsin defense is in a good position tonight to slow down Julian Reese of Maryland. While Reese has had some recent big games, it's against fast teams like Iowa and Illinois. Wisconsin very slow. They'll keep him under 13.5. Joe Madden in next.
Caravan came back. They did have a couple of transfers here. The reality is UConn is every bit as talented and dangerous as they were 1 year ago.
If there's a guy, Joe Ranieri, that for one game could take a bunch of cast-offs and steal a game, his name's Eric Spoelstra.
Game time decisions. Only on SportsGrid.
Johnny's a 19-point lead late in the opening half, only to squander that lead. Hall ball under Shaheen Holloway coming all the way back.
All these guards start jacking up shots, and then Soriano doesn't get the ball. Hey, Rick, how about stop throwing your kids under the bus and get your big man the ball, your best player, play inside out like you were doing earlier in the game, and you probably would have won.
The early line. Only on SportsGrid.
Your gut says Miami is going to win, and you should take the over. Your gut also said your NFT selfies would only go up in value. They didn't. But your head is on SportsGrid and knows the QB is in concussion protocol. The backup has a 45 QBR against the zone coverage. the New York D has the most sacks in the league. So yeah, trust your head. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
I'm sort of starting to figure out where these Canadian guys play well, bro. Not Hawaii, not California. Give me a Canadian in Ohio, Cam. Give me a Canadian in Michigan. Give me a Canadian at the Waste Management.
Good old Charlie Hoffman, the representative of Waste Management, played the best tournament of his life in the 8 years and lost in a playoff to the Canadian. It turned out to be like a wicked tournament. Shout out to Nick Taylor, gave BC's finest.
Sports Rage Late Night. Only on SportsGrid. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid. Your 24/7 sports wagering network. The early line.
Magical and historic season in Lincoln, Nebraska continues.
He is the best player in the NBA, but also in the biggest moments where the national media is watching.
Newswire.
Something that we have never seen happen before with one of the iconic coaches in the game.
Pharrell Coast to Coast.
The team covers. It's automatic. It's every time. Not sometimes. It's every time.
Game time decisions.
Luka is actually far more dangerous from three on the road this year than at home.
This game here tonight, you may want to consider taking as many points as humanly possible.
In-game live. Prime time.
We got not one, but two coaches fired systems in place.
Sports Rage
This
Late
sort of
Night.
has letdown written all over it. It's going to be hard to match the emotion that they played with the other night.
It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
We're live on SportsGrid. It's Game Time Decisions. I'm Kevin Walsh, now joined by Joe Madden with a full slate of NHL action. Joe, how are you?
I'm doing great. I'm excited for these games today. Hopefully we don't have such craziness as we did last night out there on the ice. That's for sure.
Yeah, look, it was a wild night. A lot of overs. A lot of overs for people. We'll see how this board delivers. Let's start, though, Joe, with this matchup between the Florida Panthers and the Ottawa Senators here. Florida, a considerable favorite at minus 260. High total, 6.5. What do you see for this game?
You know, I'm seeing the penalties, Kevin. I wish we could bet penalties in this one. I'm not sure if you remember the last matchup between these two, but this was the game where every player on the ice got a 10-minute misconduct, which I don't think I ever remember of seeing out there. We saw the Florida Panthers win that 5-0, and these teams just be so fiery and get scrappy out there. The Florida Panthers are doing absolutely phenomenal on the defensive side of things, but offensively as well. We saw them put up 9 goals on the Tampa Bay Lightning, limit the Lightning to 2 goals. And the teams, ever since coming out of the All-Star break, they've limited every team to 2 or less goals. So I'm circling the Ottawa Senators here and their team total. I'm taking it to the under 2.5. It's minus 106 there. I just see this team completely struggling against this defense of the Florida Panthers with Bobrovsky in goal. This team's holding opponents to 27.6 shots on goal per game, and their kills phenomenal at 83.1%. It's going to be a long night out there for the Ottawa Senators. I just don't see them lighting the lamp tonight.
So let me ask you this quickly, though, Joe, and this is something that pops off to me a little bit more because I was involved in a game last night with the Ottawa Senators. Now, they go to Tampa Bay, a decent underdog in the game. They pull off that upset there. Considering this team's on a back-to-back and they just won on the road as an underdog here, does that make them a fade candidate for you on tonight's slate?
Doesn't make me a fade candidate because I do think some teams can roll in with momentum, but I don't trust the Ottawa Senators to be able to do that against the hot team of the Florida Panthers. So you really got to look at their opponents there. In most cases, I would put it as an advantage to them being able to pull off that win as the underdog because the confidence coming into those games and that momentum swing normally follows teams, especially into that first period. So while I could see them staying a little bit competitive here in the first period, I just don't see them hanging with the Florida Panthers, not with how strong this team is right now.
Makes a lot of sense, Joe. Let's talk about the New York Rangers here. A pretty accessible money line at minus 137 for the Rags against the Dallas Stars. This total 6.5 as well, but juice pointing towards the under. How do you look at this matchup?
Yeah, and I can see why it's pointing towards that under because I really do think Igor Shesterkin needs a bounce back game after what happened to him versus the Islanders in that last one out. I really can't touch this under though because I'm a little worried about Scott Wedgwood here in net for the Dallas Stars because he's been hit and miss on the season. He's got a 3.03 goals against average and an under 900 save percentage. So the New York Rangers are so strong offensively. I do think that they can get this win, especially at home. We did see the Dallas Stars win that last meeting 6-3 versus the Rangers, but the Rangers at home on home ice, and they've played the Dallas Stars other than that game really hard going 4-1-1. So I do think this is a nice opportunity to grab the Rangers. I know it's a little juicy at minus 137, but I still do think it is worth it here on this team. This team is too hot as well. They've won their last 7, Kevin, and they're going for their 8th straight win. This isn't a team that normally pulls off this many wins in a row, but I do think they can get it done tonight. They're just rolling way too hot.
I want to ask you with this game, and I'll bring in the Capitals-Devils game because I know you have some action in that one as well. Do you factor in that these teams' last game was the Stadium Series? Does that matter at all to these handicaps here for tonight's games?
It doesn't. It doesn't factor in for me at all that they were playing in that outdoor game, especially because you look at they really didn't have to travel that much for that game. So I do think in this case, if they really had a huge travel within that or that game was harder, and I know it was a high scoring game for the Rangers and the Islanders in that outdoor game, but I just look at it as I'm not weighing that in. The Rangers came back, were able to get that comeback win in that one. And I do think this team is just playing too solid right now to write them out. Yeah. And the Islanders, well, that might be another case here, Kevin.
Yeah, well, let's talk a little bit about this game with the Devils, though, since I brought it up here. Road favorites against the Washington Capitals. Obviously a team that just does not have as much juice as we've come to expect in years prior. What do you see here with the Devils and the Capitals?
This is going to be a really interesting matchup, and I really was leaning towards the Devils on the puck line, but I don't know how we're going to see Charlie Lindgren come out here for the Washington Capitals. He's been up and down and hit and miss in some of these games. So I'm looking at the first period. I expect both of these teams to come out strong in that first period. We know the Devils can find the back of the net, and Ovechkin here for the Capitals is going to be hungry to do so as well. We saw TJ Oshie, get his 300th goal on Saturday. So he's been on fire. And Nico Dawes kind of hit and miss as well. So that first period over 1.5, again, we're laying juice in this at minus 132, but I expect it to be an explosive first period, even if it's just out of the New Jersey Devils. And then I'm going to circle a player here who I do think has been so hot that we can't fade him here. I'm looking at Nico Hischier for the anytime goal that's coming in at plus 200. He's been phenomenally strong on the season, and in his last 8 games, he has 12 points, 5 goals, 7 assists. I expect him to continue rolling hot in this game here, especially if Charlie Lindgren comes out more as I expect, which isn't so hot. Like looking at his numbers overall, he's been good, but sometimes when he has these explosive offenses, like we've seen out of the Devils, I tell you, it's like he's letting beach balls in there.
That is not exactly what you're looking for. You mentioned the Isles. They're playing the Pittsburgh Penguins on the road here. Where do you see the advantage in this game? Lower total checks in at 5.5.
Yeah, a complete battle of the Metro here. And I think the Pittsburgh Penguins at home is the right side. Again, we're going to have to lay juice with them here, but it's not too much on that money line. I just have the faith in this team coming in rested versus an Islanders team that's completely struggling when it's not 5-on-5 hockey. This is another team that once they get in that penalty box, their kill is not limiting opponents. They're only limiting opponents at 70.7% of the time. And I think the Pittsburgh Penguins with Sidney Crosby will be able to find the back of the net on Sorokin. he played in that outdoor game versus the Rangers. And I tell you, he let some easy shots in. And while I do think that was part of the outdoor game and maybe he just wasn't seeing the puck as well out there, I kind of look at him on the season and he hasn't been phenomenally strong. He's got a 3.13 goals against average and a 910 save percentage. So I can't trust Sorokin in some of these games. And I think this is one where the Penguins battle the Metro here at home, have every ability to pull off the win. They did win back in December 3-1, and I'm expecting a very similar game in this one, Kevin.
Do you feel the Penguins are a team, Joe, that could be a team that comes on here a little bit? You look right now at goal differential, and within that Eastern Conference, right, the three teams that are in the wild card race for you look at it, right, the Lightning have a positive, Detroit positive, and then it's the Penguins. They're way back. Could they be a team that starts to maybe play to that goal differential a little bit more here now in the second half?
They absolutely could be. This team just needs to stay healthy. We have a lot of older players on this team. So normally as we start to go down this stretch into the playoffs, this is where I become a little bit more concerned about their longevity within the season. But I do think as long as they stay healthy, this team has every chance, if they're able to get these wins like this win tonight, of grabbing one of those wild card spots. And I would love to see it because we all want Sidney Crosby back in the playoffs.
Yeah, we certainly do. We'll keep our eyes on that. But Joe's not going to go anywhere. We still have 7 more picks from her to go on tonight's NHL board. And a little bit, we'll be joined by Coach James Young as well for tonight's college hoops slate. Game time decisions continues after this quick break.
Caravan came back. They did have a couple of transfers here. The reality is UConn is every bit as talented and dangerous as they were 1 year ago.
If there's a guy, Joe Ranieri, that for one game could take a bunch of cast-offs and steal a game, his name's Eric Spoelstra.
Game time decisions. Only on SportsGrid.
Johnny's a 19-point lead late in the opening half, only to squander that lead. Hall ball under Shaheen Holloway coming all the way back.
All these guards start jacking up shots, and then Fiorio doesn't get the ball. Hey, Rick, how about stop throwing your kids under the bus and get your big man the ball, your best player, play inside out like you were doing earlier in the game, and you probably would have won.
The early line. Only on SportsGrid.
Your gut says Miami is going to win, and you should take the over. Your gut also said your NFT selfies would only go up in value. They didn't. But your head is on SportsGrid and knows the QB is in concussion protocol. The backup has a 45 QBR against the zone coverage. The New York D has the most sacks in the league. So yeah, trust your head. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
I'm sort of starting to figure out where these Canadian guys play well, bro. Not Hawaii, not California. Give me a Canadian in Ohio, Cam. Give me a Canadian in Michigan. Give me a Canadian at the Waste Management.
Good old Charlie Hoffman, the representative of Waste Management, played the best tournament of his life in 8 years and lost in a playoff to the Canadian. It turned out to be like a wicked tournament. Shout out to Nick Taylor, gave BC's finest.
Sports Rage Late Night. Only on SportsGrid. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid. Your 24/7 sports wagering network. The early line.
Magical and historic season in Lincoln, Nebraska continues.
He is the best player in the NBA, but also in the biggest moments where the national media is watching.
Newswire.
Something that we have never seen happen before with one of the iconic coaches in the game.
Pharrell Coast to Coast.
The team covers. It's automatic. It's every time. Not sometimes. It's every time.
Game time decisions.
Luka is actually far more dangerous from 3 on the road this year than at home.
This game here tonight, you may want to consider taking as many points as humanly possible.
In-game live. Prime time.
We got not 1, but 2 coaches fired systems in place.
Sports Rage
This
Late
sort of
Night.
has letdown written all over it. It's going to be hard to match the emotion that they played with the other night.
It's smarter to be on Sports Grid.
We're live on SportsGrid. Kevin Walsh with you here on a Tuesday night. Scrolling the Twitterverse during the break, it appears the public all over the number one seed or the top team in the country, the UConn Huskies. Not the only very public side tonight. We will break that down in a little bit. It appears I am not intentionally, but going against the public on tonight's board, college basketball-wise. We will break that down. But to help us continue to break down tonight's NHL action, that would be Joe Madden. And Joe, still a lot for us to get to here. So let's talk about the Minnesota Wild and their matchup with the Winnipeg Jets. Anybody who saw the Minnesota Wild's last game might be inclined just to bet the over 17 goals in that matchup. What do you think about their game tonight against Winnipeg?
Well, I'm taking the exact opposite to the over in this matchup. I really do think this one has to go under the total. And yes, both of these teams played last night. So both teams on the second night of a back-to-back, with the Winnipeg Jets losing to Calgary 6-3 last night, and the Minnesota Wild in that crazy comeback win where they were able to get 7 goals in the third period. In that one, though, they capitalized on every single mistake Vancouver made out there. I believe they got 3 power play goals in that game. I don't see either head coach being happy out here tonight going into this game. I think both of these teams need to and will lock down on the defensive side of the puck. Now, when we look at the goaltending matchup here, Boussoit coming in for the Winnipeg Jets. I know it's not Connor Hellebuck, but you look at Boussoit, he's one of the best backup goalies in the whole league. I love his ability to come out here and really shut down the Minnesota Wild danger shots. And looking at the Wild, they will be turning to Marc-Andre Fleury, and I do think he can have a solid game in this. Give me the under 5.5. I know if you guys want to take that over, it looks so attractive, but I just look at what these defenses have been able to do. Remember when the Winnipeg Jets were on that winning streak, it was because they were really limiting their opponent's ability to get these shots. And we look at last night, they put up 3 goals, but when you look at who put up those goals, Monahan put up 3 goals within 5 minutes and 17 seconds. It's one of the fastest records for a hat trick. It was all in that first period. Now, Monahan, he got traded from Montreal to the Jets, but before that, he played with Calgary for 9 seasons. So he was coming for a little bit of revenge on Calgary last night. Otherwise, no one else scored for Winnipeg in that game. So I'm expecting a low-scoring battle here, Kevin.
All right, there we go. Keep it under. How about potentially some juice in this game between Colorado and Vancouver? This total line at 6.5. The Avs at home minus 142 against the Canucks.
This is one that I absolutely can't take under that total. I look at Colorado and I really do not trust the goaltending that we've seen as of late, and defensively they've been giving up these shots. Now the Vancouver Canucks should want to really tighten up, and we will see Demko in net tonight. But again, this is such an explosive team offensively, and so are the Colorado Avalanche, that I do think it flies over that total of 6.5. I'm taking the over, and then I'm going to look at a couple of players here to be able to get those anytime goals. Looking at Nathan McKinnon, he's riding a huge streak here with 26 home points on the season. I do think looking at him for the anytime goal rather than taking the points, because you're going to have to lay a lot of juice, has the most value. It's coming in at minus 115, and this is the second longest home streak for points since Wayne Gretzky did it back in the late 80s. So I do think it continues tonight. And then the other side of the puck for the Vancouver Canucks, I'm going to look at Elias Lindholm. We know he got traded from the Calgary Flames and came out and made a huge bang to start that first night out, and then a huge bang when he came into Vancouver. And I think tonight's a night where he really shows up to impress against Colorado. So looking at him for the anytime goals coming in at plus 250, Kevin.
I want to ask you something quick here. You know, we mentioned Nathan McKinnon, and his MVP price has been something I've been interested by. And I know McKinnon's one of the top players in this league, but he had flipped to a minus price with Kucherov and McDavid hot on his tail. I wonder how long that could sustain. I feel, though, the main reason that McKinnon is now back to plus 160, Joe, a lot of people started to talk about Austin Matthews and his incredible goal-scoring season. He's currently the fourth option at plus 440, but it feels like this MVP race is far from over.
Oh, it is absolutely far from over. One thing you have to remember about the MVP race, it's voted on. And I really do think you have to look at a player you take out of the lineup for that team. Can that team still be able to get the wins? I don't know if Nathan McKinnon, while he is so phenomenally hot, or even Connor McDavid would get that award because they have so many playmakers on these teams. I would be looking at someone more like Panarin there for the Boston Bruins, because when you take him out of the lineup, who are you left with that's been able to put up the majority of the points? You drop back down to Marchand there, and there's a huge difference between the goal scoring between the two of them. So that's something I'm looking at. Even a long shot, Jack Hughes, if he's not out there on the ice for the New Jersey Devils, that team really struggles to be able to get the win. So when I'm looking at MVP, I'm really looking at which player you take out of that lineup, and that team's going to completely fall flat. And Nathan McKinnon out of the lineup for Colorado can still get those wins.
Yeah, I think the main thing you said there, though, and this is what's tough, is it's voted on, right? Yeah. And at the end of the day, I think Lamar was an atrocious MVP. But it was very obvious he was going to win the award because that's what was going to be voted on by everyone, and you have to always keep that in mind. Going back to these games here tonight, Joe, the Preds in action. They go to Vegas as a slight road dog, total 5.5. What do you look for?
Ooh, I think we've got a slight road dog here in the Nashville Predators. This team's coming in off rest. They've got the Kings on deck on Thursday, so sort of a look-ahead situation here. But I do think Vegas on the second night of a back-to-back, I just can't get behind them with the juice that we're having to lay. I think there's enough playmakers here on the Nashville Predators to kind of catch Vegas in an odd situation scheduling wise in this one. And now I know Vegas won the last matchup 4-1 back in January, but you look at the playmakers on the Nashville Predators with Saros in goal. You got Philip Forsberg and Ryan O'Reilly, hugely impactful for this team. And I do think they can hit Adin Hill in this one at home. So I'm going to put my money on the Nashville Predators at that plus 122. And I think you look at Philip Forsberg and Ryan O'Reilly, both of them for the anytime goal. You're getting more value with Ryan O'Reilly at plus 210, Philip Forsberg at plus 135. But I think Vegas kind of struggles in this one just because of the scheduling spot, Kevin. I don't like that second night of a back-to-back.
And you're playing overtime in this game. Is that right, Joe?
I do. I think this one is a fantastic opportunity to go to overtime because Vegas doesn't like to lose. They don't like to lose at home. And I think at plus 340, what we're getting here, I think the Preds can push them into this kind of situation. And I do think it's 2-2 or 3-3 going to OT. So I stayed off the total in this one, but I think the Preds will battle with Vegas, and I wouldn't be shocked if they did push it to overtime and then win in that overtime situation. So I had to take the value on overtime. As soon as I saw the slate for today, this one is the one that stuck out to me, that had every possibility of going there because Vegas does play so phenomenally strong at home.
And then we'll close out the slate. Columbus and L.A., the Blue Jackets, a considerable road dog here, better than 2-1. Total for this game, 6.5.
Okay, this one is kind of dangerous looking here at this matchup because the last time these teams matched up back in December, the LA Kings had that comeback win, and it was in overtime. It was a 4-3 win for the Kings, but the Columbus Blue Jackets got up so fast. They had 3 unanswered goals to start that game. The Kings, I don't expect to allow them to do that again. I'm expecting the Kings to lock down so strong defensively. They've been phenomenally strong since interim head coach Hiller took over. I'm going to take the Columbus Blue Jackets team total. It's 2.5. Again, I'm hitting it to the under at minus 118. I know they've proven they can put the points or the goals on the Kings in games in the past. I'm just not seeing it happen. Now, Cam Talbot will need to come out nice and strong for the LA Kings, but I do have faith in him here, especially the the Kings defense. This defense so phenomenally strong. Their kills coming in at 86.5%, and they're limiting opponents to 28.2 shots on goal per game. I'm not touching the full game total, though, because I'm a little worried about Elvis in net for the Columbus Blue Jackets, but I do think we'll see the defense of the Kings do enough in this one that Cam Talbot won't be put under too much pressure, and the Columbus Blue Jackets will just struggle to score. So give me their team total under 2.5. They're only averaging 2.92 goals per game. Their power play isn't strong anyways, and it would be negated by this phenomenal kill here of the LA Kings. I just love what they've been doing ever since the coaching change here, Kevin.
It's a great breakdown, Joe. I want to mention something quickly. You know, there's a specials tab for NHL. And there's a daily player specials. Any player who scored 3+ goals today is minus 125. I wish they were offering the no. I don't know what I know there's been more hat tricks at this point in the year than in the last, it's like 35, 40 years. I know it's been historic, Joe, but still the odds that someone today scores 3, I don't think minus 125 is right. I wish I could bet the no on that.
Yeah, I wish we could as well, because I would expect maybe a plus 220 here for one of these players to get a hat trick tonight. If it was at those kind of odds, I would. And if Austin Matthews was out there on the ice versus Colorado tonight, I would 100% take that. Austin Matthews has 6 hat tricks on the season and 13 career. He's tied with 1 year for Wayne Gretzky, and you know he's looking to move up that leaderboard for all-time hat tricks in a season. So he's a player you need to start looking at for those hat tricks in these next couple of games coming out here, especially against higher competition. But on tonight's slate, I don't know who would get it. I couldn't think of any of these players who would be confident in taking that hat trick ability tonight, especially minus 125. That's crazy, Kevin.
That's what the shortest price is McKinnon is 26 to 1. Again, Joe, appreciate it. Coach James Young up next.
Caravan came back. They did have a couple of transfers here. The reality is UConn is every bit as talented and dangerous as they were 1 year ago.
If there's a guy, Joe Ranieri, that for one game could take a bunch of cast-offs and steal a game, his name's Eric Spoelstra.
Game time decisions. Only on SportsGrid.
Johnny's a 19-point lead late in the opening half, only to squander that lead. Hall ball under Shaheen Holloway coming all the way back.
All these guards start jacking up shots, and then Cioriano doesn't get the ball. Hey, Rick, how about stop throwing your kids under the bus and get your big man the ball, your best player, play inside out like you were doing earlier in the game, and you probably would have won.
The early line. Only on SportsGrid.
Your gut says Miami is going to win, and you should take the over. Your gut also said your NFT selfies would only go up in value. They didn't. But your head is on SportsGrid and knows the QB is in concussion protocol. The backup has a 45 QBR against the zone coverage. The New York D has the most sacks in the league. So yeah, trust your head. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
I'm sort of starting to figure out where these Canadian guys play well, bro. Not Hawaii, not California. Give me a Canadian in Ohio, Cam. Give me a Canadian in Michigan. Give me a Canadian at the Waste Management.
Good old Charlie Hoffman, the representative of Waste Management, played the best tournament of his life in 8 years and lost in a playoff to the Canadian. It turned out to be like a wicked tournament. Shout out to Nick Taylor, gave BC's finest.
Sports Rage Late Night. Only on SportsGrid. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid. Your 24/7 sports wagering network. The early line.
Magical and historic season in Lincoln, Nebraska continues.
He is the best player in the NBA, but also in the biggest moments where the national media is watching.
Newswire.
Something that we have never seen happen before with one of the iconic coaches in the game.
Pharrell coast to coast.
The team covers. It's automatic. It's every time. Not sometimes. It's every time.
Game time decisions.
Luka is actually far more dangerous from three on the road this year than at home.
This game here tonight, you may want to consider taking as many points as humanly possible.
In-game live. Prime time.
We got not one, but two coaches fired systems in place.
Sports Rage
This
late
sort of
night.
has letdown written all over it. It's going to be hard to match the emotion that they played with the other night.
It's smarter to be on Sports Grid.
All right, let's make it happen. Coach James Young steps up and in here on a Tuesday night, college basketball style. JY, how you feeling?
Hey, man, it's good to be on. Got some good games tonight. We got one that just tipped off with Villanova. I do believe tipped off at 6:30. So some good games highlighted, obviously, by UConn Creighton tonight.
Let's start right there, JY. Looks like we could be on opposite sides of this game, though. Your approach, interesting, makes me feel a bit better. It's not slander. I think the people will see why. How are you betting Creighton UConn?
I think this is going to be a really good game. And for me, I think that the safest thing for me to do is if this comes down to a final possession, I saw them beat Villanova by 1 at Nova. I'm just going to take UConn on the money line. I'll pay a little bit. I'll pay a little bit more. I'll pay, I guess, shop around and see 145, 155, 148. Shop around and find the best deal. But I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to take UConn on the money line that they come out and win this game in a really tight game. I do think UConn may lose a game before the regular season ends. I just don't think it's tonight. I actually think it's going to be a rematch versus Marquette, which I think is next weekend.
So I am on Creighton. I'll tell you why, JY. And I want you to then to be able to speak to this a little bit as a coach. And obviously, like, the levels are all different. But the single best win that any team has all year long is UConn's win they just put up over Marquette, I would say, right? When it's not just about who you beat, where you beat, but the level of the win, right? I mean, to dominate a team of Marquette's caliber like that is obviously massive. And clearly that was a game that UConn got up for. I'm not saying they won't be up to play Creighton. I'm saying it is very, very hard to ask any team to have to do that 2 games in a row. Their single best performance of the year just came against Marquette. JY, we go through the list of games that UConn has played, and at Creighton could arguably, when you consider, home road, this could be the toughest game they've played all year long at Creighton. So I took the 3.5 points with the Blue Jays. If you ask me who's the better team, it's UConn. That's not how college basketball operates. We know that. I'm getting 3.5 at home here. I think this line's maybe a little inflated with what we just saw from UConn here, because I think when a team plays their very best basketball, JY, it's hard to do that 2 games in a row.
It is hard to do that 2 games in a row unless you're a Hurley. And I've gotten to know the Hurley family over the years. I tell you what, as good as they looked against Marquette, I guarantee you Dan Hurley kicked their ass in practice. I've seen the Hurleys up by 40 act like madmen. All 3 of them. Bobby, Bob, and Danny. All of them. So to me, I think this is a game where you look at this team and they say, and I know I'm Hurley, you don't come ready to play, they're going to punch you dead in the mouth. You'll know right off the bat what kind of UConn team shows up. And I think what's interesting is, if I'm not mistaken, first game they played, 62-48, it was the first game that Donovan Clingan came back from his injury. So he slowly has ramped it up in the best defensive performance probably by UConn all year. I think Clingan is a problem for Kalkbrenner because I think Kalkbrenner is just not physical enough. And I think the play of the guards, especially the play of Castle, has been as of late. That's why I'm leaning this game. I think, Kevin, it's going to be a fantastic game. And I think there may be opportunities to bet this game multiple times.
Sure.
So I think it's going to be close the whole time. I just think for me, the safest thing to go is maybe UConn wins by like 2 or 3. I just think safer for me, take them on the money line.
And that's why I said the fact that JY here is not laying the points, and it's not a lot of points, this I very well could cover in a loss with Creighton, right? It could happen. I think that's how the game against, was it Villanova, ended, with that insane half-court shot that kind of backdoored a number. So these things happen, and it could very well play out here. JY, another ranked game you're betting tonight is Texas Tech, TCU. We saw Big 12 action last night, more Big 12 battles tonight. What do you like?
Well, this is going to be, to me, a really good game. And I look at the fact that TCU won the first game, I think, by 7. I think it was 85-78 first time around. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to go -5.5 for Texas Tech. I think this is a game in which both teams get into the tournament. I think TCU, if you think about like how you look at UConn, I can look at TCU in a wild game that they ended up stealing versus K-State at the end. Maybe there's a little bit of them coming back to the pack a little bit, going on the road again, another tough environment. Jamie Dixon's done a hell of a job. But, what this coach has done at Texas Tech, and this guy just wins flat out. I'm going to take the 5.5. I'll give it. I think Texas Tech wins by about 8 to 10 points.
Okay, let me ask you too, JY. I don't know if you're going to be on this game, but BYU-Baylor is another battle in the Big 12 tonight with BYU, the lower-ranked team, laying points to the Baylor Bears. I didn't get involved with this game. I was a bit tempted by the under here ultimately in this matchup, but I left it alone. Is there anything you're looking for in this game tonight here with BYU and Baylor?
BYU shoots the ball extremely well, especially from home, and you have a Baylor team that at times can struggle defensively. I'm going to be watching out to see how well BYU shoots in their own gym, and does Baylor get up into their space, really make them punch the ball to the basket and try and defend at the rim. Should be another good game. It's amazing when you look at the Big 12, Kevin, and solidly the best league in the country. I don't think it's even close. The matchups that we have, we just had a big matchup last night. Actually, 2 of them. Obviously Iowa State with Houston, and then obviously K-State with the cover versus Texas. This league just cranks out matchup after matchup. Don't worry, we don't need to talk about I think West Virginia and UCF. We can leave that game alone. We don't have to talk about that game tonight.
Let me ask you this though, JY. And look, price always factors in. Baylor at the moment. Let's just use the FanDuel Sportsbook here. 40-1 to win the national championship. BYU 65-1 to win the national championship. If I use the Final Four market, Baylor plus 950, BYU 16-1. Who would you rather have a ticket on? Obviously factoring the price as well between Baylor and BYU.
It's tough. I probably would say BYU, to be honest with you.
That's how I was leaning as well.
Because I just think Baylor has some maddening performances. BYU can get hot at any point with their shooting. I just don't trust this Baylor team as much as other people do. So if you said to me, hey, you could take one team between Baylor and BYU, I would take BYU. Close, but I would take them over Baylor.
I think for me, I think BYU feels a bit deeper. Also, Jacoby Walter, who is a guy that I'm supposed to love, because for me, I like watching freshmen in the college game. Jacoby Walter is shooting 32% from the field in Big 12 play. And, this is supposed to be their lead scorer. And I don't know if that's going to get better, Coach. And sometimes we've seen guys get to the tournament and it doesn't get better. Brandon Miller was awful last year in the tournament. That's what's stopping me, right? Is for me, I don't know if I can trust Jacoby Walter enough. And this is a BYU team that's predicated on their offense, and I know it's a very good offense, but if there are moments where they lack efficiency, I don't trust the defensive end of it to hold up enough. I know you're betting some WCC action tonight with St. Mary's and San Fran, the Dons, catching points here. What do you see, JY?
I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to take St. Mary's at home. I think we've talked about this I think we talked about this last week, where this is going to get really tricky in the WCC, right? Because let's be honest, Gonzaga is squarely on the bubble. So to me, St. Mary's needs to continue to play well in case they get picked off. Now, they should get in no matter what, unless they seriously stumble and pull like a South Carolina down the stretch, which could just stumble their way right out of the tournament in like a week and a half. I just like this St. Mary's team. They're at home. They already have a 20-point win on the road versus the Dons. I'm going to lay the points to take St. Mary's minus 7.5.
Yeah, I think, St. Mary's is ultimately fine, I would say, when you look through on a bracket matrix, right? I don't think they have much to worry about in terms of making it, JY. But, if you're St. Mary's, this is a great opportunity here, an unbeaten WCC season to potentially, keep Gonzaga out, which, if they beat Gonzaga 2 more times, I don't think Gonzaga is going to get in. Now, I don't think that's going to happen, but that's still a rivalry there. It's not one of those things where St. Mary's would lay down for the benefit of the WCC, because, remember this, Gonzaga's leaving, right? If I'm not mistaken, JY, this is the last year for the Zags in the WCC. And I tell you what, it would be, while it'd be unfortunate for my ticket, there would be something oddly poetic about the final year for Gonzaga being in the WCC being what costs Gonzaga making the tournament. I'll tell you right now, again, we're going to put half of this Big 12, more than half, right? Like TCU is going to get into this tournament here. I mean, Gonzaga would run that team off the floor. They'd run that team off the floor. But TCU plays every single game against the Big 12. You got to win a couple of them. Every win you get in the Big 12 is great, and that's what makes the difference. So St. Mary's is playing for a ton on a nightly basis. But also, what I would say, and I don't know if this is the spot, JY, but, we even saw with Gonzaga, it is hard in any conference, coach. You can speak to this, to go unbeaten in conference play. Very, very difficult.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think what's also difficult, Kevin, is to beat a team 3 times. That's a lot, especially when you talk about rivalries, when you talk about teams that are, dare I say, evenly matched. So I would say this, and maybe I don't know if this is going to make sense to people. I think St. Mary's has a better chance of winning the league if they lose the second game to Gonzaga. If they beat Gonzaga round 2, then I'm more likely to say there's no way it happens 3 times. Because and I know, Kevin, it is very hard to beat a team 3 times in the season. Mm-hmm. So to me, that's something I'll look out for. But if Gonzaga does not win the league, I don't know if they make the tournament. I think they're squarely on the bubble. And there's teams like the one playing right now, Villanova, that can play their way in because they're going to play better competition down the stretch. And this is where the WCC hurts a team like Gonzaga. Not normally, Kevin, but this year it could hurt them.
I'm interested, though, is do they only need to beat St. Mary's once? And I guess what I mean by that more so is if Gonzaga finishes out with another, so they're on a 4-game winning streak. If they close the regular season with 8 wins, JY, do you think that's good enough? And they beat at St. Mary's? Do you think they'll need the outright bid of winning the conference tournament if they beat St. Mary's in the regular season finale on the road?
I'll tell you this.
I think that's all they need.
Well, this is going to sound crazy. They could be attached to Kentucky. They need, if Kentucky stumbles down the stretch, I think that win that they had at Kentucky may not hold as much weight. But if Kentucky continues to play the way they did, like they did against Auburn, and they play better, they will bring them with them.
Right, but I think Kentucky already basically kind of validated, right? Winning at Auburn was so big, JY, for them. Because the Gonzaga win, people were like, uh-oh. And I think that was really the big one. There's still some big games left for Kentucky. Coach is not going anywhere. We're going to get a Donnie Right side best bet next.
What?
Power band came back. They did have a couple of transfers here. The reality is UConn is every bit as talented and dangerous as they were 1 year ago.
If there's a guy, Joe Ranieri, that for one game could take a bunch of cast-offs and steal a game, his name's Eric Spoelstra.
Game time decisions. Only on SportsGrid.
Johnny's a 19-point lead late in the opening half, only to squander that lead. Hall ball under Shaheen Holloway coming all the way back.
All these guards start jacking up shots, and then Cioriano doesn't get the ball. Hey, Rick, how about stop throwing your kids under the bus and get your big man the ball, your best player, play inside out like you were doing earlier in the game, and you probably would have won.
The early line. Only on SportsGrid.
Your gut says Miami is going to win, and you should take the over. Your gut also said your NFT selfies would only go up in value. They didn't. But your head is on SportsGrid and knows the QB is in concussion protocol. The backup has a 45 QBR against the zone coverage. The New York team has the most sacks in the league. So yeah, trust your head. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
I'm sort of starting to figure out where these Canadian guys play well, bro. Not Hawaii, not California. Give me a Canadian in Ohio, Kev. Give me a Canadian in Michigan. Give me a Canadian at the Waste Management.
Good old Charlie Hoffman, the representative of Waste Management, played the best tournament of his life in the 8 years and lost in a playoff to the Canadian. It turned out to be like a wicked tournament. Shout out to Nick Taylor, gave BC's finest.
Sports Rage Late Night. Only on SportsGrid. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid. Your 24/7 sports wagering network. The early line.
Magical and historic season in Lincoln, Nebraska continues.
He is the best player in the NBA, but also in the biggest moments where the national media is watching.
Newswire.
Something that we have never seen happen before with one of the iconic coaches in the game.
Pharrell coast to coast.
The team covers. It's automatic. It's every time. Not sometimes. It's every time.
Game time decisions.
Luka is actually far more dangerous from three on the road this year than at home.
This game here tonight, you may want to consider taking as many points as humanly possible.
In-game live. Prime time.
We got not one, but two coaches fired systems in place.
Sports Rage
This
Late
sort of
Night.
has letdown written all over it. It's going to be hard to match the emotion that they played with the other night.
It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
Back here with Coach. We're going to hit the 7 o'clock slate a little bit more before it tips. But I want to throw it over a clip from this morning's early line with Ben Stevens and Donnie Rightside. Donnie, an excellent, excellent handicapper when it comes to college basketball. His best bet for the big game tonight.
8:30 tonight, UConn and Creighton. I'm looking towards an under in this game. Ben, how about that? 145.5 here currently at the FanDuel Sportsbook. Here's where I like the under for Connecticut and Creighton. Number one, it's a big-time Big East matchup. Number two, we just had that massive performance by UConn over the weekend and a lot of excitement with beating Marquette. But however, these two teams match up and the styles that make the fights here, it could get a little bit ugly. Just to keep it short, both of these teams really want to shoot the three-point shot. But how about both of these defenses, Ben? Love to chase you off the three-point line. Both of these teams allow you to score down low. Point distribution, number one on defense for Creighton, number three on Connecticut. But how about this? Teams, they don't want to score from inside the paint, Ben. They want to shoot the three-point shot. Two good defenses match up tonight. It'll be a wonderful game to watch. Stays under for me.
All right, there's the breakdown, JY, from Donnie Rightside on the under in Creighton, UConn. Anything else tipping at 7 o'clock that you are interested in? Oh.
I think if you look at this West Virginia team, besides that big performance against Kansas when he shot like 94%, I'm joking, but it felt like 94%. I like UCF on the money line, and I like VCU plus the 2.5 at UMass. Both of those games tipping off in about 2 minutes.
I just made an ad for me. And look, I was telling this to JY during the break. I think we're starting to get to the point of the year. There's some value on road teams. Give me Iowa plus the 9.5. I think this offensive style, it can absolutely throw off Michigan State. I think it is hard to pull away from a team that plays as fast as they do, consistently getting up shots. I know they're coming off of that overtime win against Wisconsin, but for me, 9.5, just a little too much there. Give me the Hawkeyes plus the points. We're going to get updated NBA win totals from Coach in 10 minutes, but we're going to talk about the college football playoff format next. Back with you here on Game Time Decisions. I'm Kevin Walsh with you on a Tuesday night. College hoop slate really start to kick it in to high gear. We just broke it down with JY. I'll reset my card plus some prop picks there, but did just add talking through with Coach Iowa plus 9.5 at Michigan State tonight. Give me the Hawkeyes and their offense to hang with Sparty in that game. But I do want to keep it with the college world, but go to the college football landscape. Some breaking news today around the college football playoffs updated format. They have finally settled on a 5+7 format. What you're seeing there is the national title odds, basically creating a bracket that done by our guy, Ben Stevens. But let's just quickly talk about what 5+7 means. We have a 12-team field for the college football playoff going into next season. 5 automatic bids, 7 at-large bids. Think of it like the March Madness tournament, right? Very simple. 7 at-large bids, 5 auto bids. The highest ranking power conference champions are going to always be in the mix. But it isn't defined that way anymore. The initial format here was going to be 6+6. That's when we had 5 Power 5 conferences. Now we really only have 4. You could argue, and it's reflected here, we actually only have 2. But how this is simply going to go is the 5 highest ranked conference champions are going to go. And what is incredible about that is, because this is obviously much different in the college football landscape, it's not regular season conference champions. It is whoever wins that conference championship game. So keep that in mind as our radio audience joins us here on a Tuesday night, live with you across the SportsGrid network, including SiriusXM, Channel 159. Kevin Walsh with you on Game Time Decisions. So let's just quickly look at the format through the title odds here, and we'll explain this a little bit. Georgia has the best odds, so they would be number 1. Ohio State with the second best odds would be number 2. We then go all the way down to Florida State with the 9th best title odds, and they would get the 3rd overall seed and receive a bye. Now, that is because Texas, Oregon, Bama, LSU, Michigan, and Ole Miss play in either the SEC or the Big Ten, which is where your 1 and 2 seed, using the odds, came from. Meaning, this 16 group here, those are all auto bids. I mean, those are all at-large bids. So they're fighting for pole positioning. It goes a step further. Here's Penn State at 25-1. Just off this graphic is Notre Dame. If we go back to the graphic that Ben created, and again, the little bracket that he put together, you will notice he put Notre Dame / Penn State. They have the same odds. One of them would be the 11. The other would be left out. For the 5th team, That would be the auto bid from a conference champion, likely coming from a mid-major, which at the moment is positioned as Liberty at nearly a gazillion to 1 to win the national championship. So when you try and factor in make-miss college football playoff odds, you're going to be factoring in the mid-major group who is going to ultimately be the highest ranked of the bunch. It makes for a very interesting situation. But there is one major conference that hasn't been referenced at all, and that would be the Big 12. Utah and Kansas State at the moment are both 60 to 1 to win the national championship next year. The reason that Ben propositioned this like this is not just because they have the same odds, because if they were to meet in a hypothetical Big 12 championship game, one of them would get in, and the other would be completely left out through the odds. Here is what stands out to me, though, from with the way this bracket breaks out and where the value is going to be created for us bettors, is of this 12-team field, the Big Ten and the SEC are taking up 10 of the 12 spots. I don't really feel that is realistic. I don't actually think all these teams are going to get in. If we go back to the national championship market here, and we look at how the top 10 looks, right, which starts with Georgia and goes to Ohio State. Okay, they're going to be in. Alabama, we have every reason to believe, will be in. But the odds are, with those national championship prices, I would say 2 or 3 of them, I think definitely 2, are going to miss out. Again, let's just say Florida State wins the ACC, and these teams here that are able to win, Georgia and Ohio State are able to win the respective big conferences. These teams are going to end up beating one another. Texas is in the SEC, remember that. Bama, LSU, Ole Miss. There's going to be losses handed out here. If Georgia goes and runs the table, they're picking off 1 or 2 of these teams. The college football playoff, we know we've never put in 2-loss teams yet. Obviously, that is going to change going to a 12-team format. But could it change so drastically that we put in a 3-loss team? How would, let's just use LSU for example, would LSU with 3 losses, and those losses could come to Georgia, Bama, and Texas, fare against a 1-loss Clemson, who's not even here on the board? How would a 3-loss Oregon from the Big Ten fare against a 1-loss Utah or a 1-loss K-State or a 1-loss Oklahoma State? So when we are looking for value in the national championship market, I think you might have to step aside. You're going to have some strong takes, right? The teams that you love in the Big Ten and the SEC, you're going to want a part of. But those fringe teams, there's going to be value on them to miss the college football playoff, and there's going to be a lot of value on the ACC and the Big 12 to make the college football playoff, and I think that could factor in to the Heisman race. Quinn Ewers plus 750, same number on Carson Beck and Dylan Gabriel. And you continue to go through this list here. Will Howard, right, transferring to Ohio State. Milroe, Nico, Garrett Nussmeier, Jackson Dart. Here we go, Arizona, Big 12. Noah Fafita, he was great, 20 to 1. First 8 guys all come from this list. But I think now, here's the Heisman field should expand now in terms of guys we are talking about. I think it is going to be close to impossible, though, to win the Heisman Trophy and miss the college football playoff, which, ironically, to put a button on an argument that I had all year long, Jaden Daniels and the LSU Tigers still would have missed the college football playoff in a 12-team format. But keep that in mind where some of these back-end long shots now, if they're going to get into the college football playoff, and it doesn't have to be Kadon Slater, right? These teams and these players, these quarterbacks realistically can get into the college football playoff conversation and then crash into that Heisman conversation. Coach James Young is back with NBA win totals next.
Power band came back. They did have a couple of transfers here. The reality is UConn is every bit as talented and dangerous as they were 1 year ago.
If there's a guy, Joe Ranieri, that for one game could take a bunch of cast-offs and steal a game, his name's Eric Spoelstra.
Game time decisions. Only on SportsGrid.
Johnny's a 19-point lead late in the opening half, only to squander that lead. Hall ball under Shaheen Holloway coming all the way back.
All these guards start jacking up shots, and then Cioriano doesn't get the ball. Hey, Rick, how about stop throwing your kids under the bus and get your big man the ball, your best player, play inside out like you were doing earlier in the game, and you probably would have won.
The early line. Only on SportsGrid.
Your gut says Miami is going to win, and you should take the over. Your gut also said your NFT selfies would only go up in value. They didn't. But your head is on SportsGrid and knows the QB is in concussion protocol. The backup has a 45 QBR against the zone coverage. The New York D has the most sacks in the league. So yeah, trust your head. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
I'm sort of starting to figure out where the Canadian guys play well, bro. Not Hawaii, not California. Give me a Canadian in Ohio, Kev. Give me a Canadian in Michigan. Give me a Canadian at the Waste Management.
Good old Charlie Hoffman, the representative of Waste Management, played the best tournament of his life in 8 years and lost in a playoff to the Canadian. It turned out to be like a wicked tournament. Shout out to Nick Taylor, gave BC's finest.
Sports Rage Late Night. Only on SportsGrid. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid. Your 24/7 sports wagering network. The early line.
Magical and historic season in Lincoln, Nebraska continues.
He is the best player in the NBA, but also in the biggest moments where the national media is watching.
Newswire.
Something that we have never seen happen before with one of the iconic coaches in the game.
Pharrell coast to coast.
The team covers. It's automatic. It's every time. Not sometimes. It's every time.
Game time decisions.
Luka is actually far more dangerous from three on the road this year than at home.
This game here tonight, you may want to consider taking as many points as humanly possible.
In-game live. Prime time.
We got not one, but two coaches fired systems in place.
Sports Rage
This
Late
sort of
Night.
has letdown written all over it. It's going to be hard to match the emotion that they played with the other night.
It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
Hey now, watch out. Here it comes, Game Time Decisions. Kevin Walsh, Coach James Young, JY. I know we got to talk NBA win totals, but guess what? Rock fight alert. Rock fight alert. Look at this Missouri-Tennessee score at the under 16. 1-0 Missouri. What is that? Rock fight.
Listen, English football has broken out there in the SEC with a 1-0 rock fight so far to start the game. I mean, someone could have made 2 free throws. I mean, you only make 1. I mean, what is the over/under? Is 133 and a half. Can they get 100?
What was it? 148 and a half. It's already dropped 15 points. You might have to bet the over. I mean, come on now. Rock fights broken. That's crazy.
Fights.
I wasn't ready for that. I don't know what I was ready for, but it wasn't that. I'll be honest with you. All right, there it is. JY with the full breakdown. All right, NBA win totals. I managed to get my... All right, here we go. JY has completely stunned me and is about to back up my best bet from yesterday, which is the Milwaukee Bucks over 50.5 wins. JY, your breakdown on the Bucks' updated win total.
Well, listen, Kevin, at 50.5, it was 51.5 before they lost. Up, by the way, score update: 2-1 Tennessee. We're moving.
Right,
we're moving now. We're moving.
Here we go.
Listen,
got juice.
When I looked at this, I looked at one thing. well, besides the fact that Doc does do well in the regular season, and he's got to get this team to play better, they have to go 16-10 down the stretch to go over this win total. They only have 3 back-to-backs left. It will come down to this West Coast trip of at the Warriors, Lakers, Clippers, and Kings. None of them are back-to-backs. So to me, I think this team is going to try and get that top 3 spot. I think some of the other teams, Knicks, may continue to fall back, maybe a little bit with Cleveland as well. I like the Bucks because Doc is going to have to get them to play well and with confidence. I like them to go at least 16-10 down the stretch of the last 26 games and go over 50.5 wins.
I obviously fully agree. I mean, I broke this down yesterday. I think we're getting a lot of value here. You know, the idea with fading Doc is postseason, not regular season. And I am equally as interested as you, JY. The one thing that you acknowledged, and I did as well, it is a difficult schedule for Milwaukee, but they should be a great basketball team. One team with an easy schedule, that's the Orlando Magic. What are you going to do with their win total?
I'm going to go over 45.5, Kevin, going 16-11 down the stretch, folks. They have the easiest schedule the rest of the way. I want you to think about this. Twice against the Pistons, once against the Wizards, 3 versus the Hornets, 1 versus the Blazers, 2 versus the Rockets, and 1 versus, I forget the other team. They have 4 back-to-backs, right? They need to get going here. They're only 30-25. They want to make sure they secure a top 6 seed. I think they need to get to 46 wins, Kevin, 47 wins, to get maybe a top 6 seed, depending on what everybody else does. So because of that, I like Orlando with the easiest schedule the rest of the way, over 45.5 wins.
Yeah, for me, I think one of the things that kept me off them, it's one of the reasons I like Milwaukee, JY, is the Magic needing to go 16-11 is the same thing the Bucks need to go. Different schedules, I get all of that, but that's what worried me, if you will, about Orlando is it's a high ask. But I'll tell you this, guys, that is why Orlando is a huge, huge favorite to make the playoffs right now, is the idea with that schedule, they're going to be solid. But JY, look, I understand that team's not going to fall into the 9-10 portion of the play-in. I was interested in Orlando to miss the playoffs and just see if I could get them to lose out in the play-in, which is very possible, I still feel, for this young basketball team, depending on how if they have to play the Miami Heat, right, let's just say in a 7-8 game, and then all of a sudden Orlando's in a do-or-die game, that could get tricky for them.
That can get tricky for them. And if you think about Orlando, folks, being tied with Indiana and Miami, think about this, folks. Orlando's got the easiest schedule the rest of the way. 4th easiest is Miami. So to trust Miami to stay even or above Orlando, I do, because this is honestly, folks, is looking at the fact of what they do, right? And I think Spo will find a way to get to 6. So I do think, and you're right, Kevin, a lot of it's going to come down to matchups, right? If you think about it, Miami, Orlando, Chicago, Atlanta. I'll tell you this much.
Yeah.
Atlanta beats Chicago 8-9. Let's say Miami beats Orlando 7-8. Atlanta beats Chicago 8-9. It's Orlando going against Trae Young. I'm taking Trae Young. Right. As bad as they've been, I'm still taking Trae because he had one game he could literally go for 50 and take a game over. So I do think there is a pretty decent chance, although I like the over. If they get that playing game, I don't think they're making the playoffs.
And I'll say this, it's less about they're plus 490 to miss. If they ended up in that elimination game, you wouldn't even need a bet. You wouldn't even need the Hawks to win. You'd be able to get out of it. Right? So these are all things to factor in. You're going out west, JY, for your last NBA win total. What do you have?
I'm going to go Utah to go under 37.5 wins, or 26-30. So that means they can only win 11 more games the rest of the year for this to cover. They have the 4th toughest stretch the rest of the way, right? And think about this, folks. If I'm not mistaken, Kevin, they were pretty good last year, and they fell off a cliff. And I looked it up. 8-14 after the All-Star break last year. Danny Ainge is one of those guys that he's going to value draft picks in the lottery than going into the play-in tournament. So I think they go under 37.5 wins. I just think that schedule is a bear. People have to play, all have something to play for. Under 37.5 wins for the Utah Jazz.
I don't mind the look. I think, I was thinking kind of similar. I was thinking about taking the Rockets over because I think they're going to really push for it, right? Where the Jazz could go the other way. I want to throw the Lakers out to you, JY. Because the Lakers right now are 30-26. Their updated win total checks in at 44.5. So you would need this team to win to go, what would that be, 15-12? If they have 27 games remaining, which I think is doable for this basketball team. They got red hot heading into the All-Star break. But LeBron is going to potentially miss this first game out of the break, which obviously is less than ideal. But the continuity that they have, Coach, how valuable do you think that could be for this team in the second half?
I think there could be continuity. I think a big reason why, Kevin, is LeBron wants and listen, I want to address this. I heard Donnie's take on TEL this morning with Ben, talking about the Lakers and teams like that. Maybe if you're close, you rest some of your guys. I'm sorry, Donnie. I completely disagree. You don't want no part of no play-in tournament. If you're going to go for it, you're going to go for it. And LeBron said as such. So although their schedule is toughest, they still got the Wizards twice, Spurs once, Raptors once, Grizzlies twice, Nets once, Atlanta once. They should be able to take all those games. So then it comes down to some of the other games. Minnesota, OKC, Cleveland, Clippers. I think LeBron's going to be motivated. He doesn't want to see what happened to Steph Curry years ago. He goes and he gets them to the 6th seed. They go over their win total.
You're going to have to tell me more on the break about Donnie's Laker play-in take. I look forward to that. I'm going to go through my college card next, right here on SportsGrid.
Caravan came back. They did have a couple of transfers here. The reality is UConn is every bit as talented and dangerous as they were 1 year ago.
If there's a guy, Joe Ranieri, that for one game can take a bunch of cast-offs and steal a game, his name's Eric Spoelstra.
Game time decisions. Only on SportsGrid.
Johnny's a 19-point lead late in the opening half, only to squander that lead. Hall ball under Shaheen Holloway coming all the way back.
All these guards start jacking up shots, and then Soriano doesn't get the ball. Hey, Rick, how about stop throwing your kids under the bus and get your big man the ball, your best player, play inside out like you were doing earlier in the game, and you probably would have won.
The early line. Only on SportsGrid.
Your gut says Miami is going to win, and you should take the over. Your gut also said your NFT selfies would only go up in value. They didn't. But your head is on SportsGrid and knows the QB is in concussion protocol. The backup has a 45 QBR against the zone coverage. The New York D has the most sacks in the league. So yeah, trust your head. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
I'm sort of starting to figure out where these Canadian guys play well, bro. Not Hawaii, not California. Give me a Canadian in Ohio, Kev. Give me a Canadian in Michigan. Give me a Canadian at the Waste Management.
Good old Charlie Hoffman, the representative of Waste Management, played the best tournament of his life in the 8 years and lost in a playoff to the Canadian. It turned out to be like a wicked tournament. Shout out to Nick Taylor, gave BC's finest.
Sports Rage Late Night. only on SportsGrid. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid. Your 24/7 sports wagering network. The early line.
Magical and historic season in Lincoln, Nebraska continues.
He is the best player in the NBA, but also in the biggest moments where the national media is watching.
Newswire.
Something that we have never seen happen before with one of the iconic coaches in the game.
Pharrell coast to coast.
The team covers. It's automatic. It's every time. Not sometimes. It's every time.
Game time decisions.
Luka is actually far more dangerous from three on the road this year than at home.
This game here tonight, you may want to consider taking as many points as humanly possible.
In-game live. Prime time.
We got not one, but two coaches fired systems in place.
Sports Rage
This
late
sort
night.
of has letdown written all over it. It's going to be hard to match the emotion that they played with the other night.
It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
Live on SportsGrid with you. It is a Tuesday night. I'm Kevin Walsh here on Game Time Decisions. We've got 4 college picks to go through. We are live right now with an under 8 in the first half lead for the Iowa Hawkeyes. 24-21. Offense looks great for this basketball team. Early, the live spread is down to 5.5. Live total up to 157.5. Definitely one of the storylines of the early board is how low scoring this game between Tennessee, number 5 in the country, and Mizzou is. 7-2 as that game is about to hit the under 12 timeout. We will keep our eyes on the live college board, but let's put some picks on the board here. And we talked about it. We're going with Creighton. Catching points at home, bet them plus 3.5. UConn, probably the most public side of the night. That is not why I'm on Creighton. I am on Creighton because of the spot. We just saw the UConn Huskies beat Marquette by 28 points. Absolute domination of a Marquette team that entered that basketball game ranked inside the top 5. Still ranked inside the top 8 for the Marquette Golden Eagles. Look, I personally am maybe not grading the overall Big East as high as everybody else, but it doesn't mean that was not an incredible win, and it is arguably the best win that any team has all college basketball season when you think about caliber of opponent and just the absolute size of the victory. To do that again is close to impossible. If UConn can go out here tonight and rout Creighton, they should probably drop their title odds again, legitimately. I know this team was kind of booked right around Purdue and Houston for a while, down to plus 450. You might have to go 3-1 if they roll this Creighton team. And I don't love this Creighton team. Currently ranked 15th in college basketball. I think they're firmly inside the top 25 in college hoops. Not a team I'm investing in futures-wise, anything of the nature. But getting 3.5 points at home, this is their second look at the UConn Huskies. I just think it's a magic spot for the Creighton Blue Jays, and I'm backing them plus 3.5. I'm also backing San Diego State plus 2. Now, this is a cardinal sin bet, probably to some degree, taking San Diego State. Ranked road dog against an unranked basketball team. This fits the exact description of what you do not do this college basketball season. But this is just a completely different college hoop season. I think there are spots where we are seeing home court advantage weighed too heavily. These teams met at the very end of January or the very, very beginning of February. It was the beginning of February. It was the 3rd, in fact, of February. And at the time, you had a ranked Utah State team and an unranked San Diego State team. And what did you get? 6.5-point favorite. San Diego State wins by 14. Routed the Aggies. Routed them. So what has played out since that meeting? Well, San Diego State did suffer an OT loss to Nevada, but their most 2 recent performances, double-digit wins against the 2 other top teams in this conference in Colorado State and New Mexico. Now, I would hear a theory if you told me that San Diego State having to do it a 3rd time, because very clearly the 4 best teams in this conference are the Aztecs, the Aggies, the Lobos and the Rams, no doubt about it. But this line has moved too far. If it was 6.5 when these teams played at San Diego State, Utah State is now laying 2.5. That means home court advantage is worth 4.5 points. In order to do that full flip around, it's not. That's not how much home court advantage is worth. And especially when, since the last time they've met, Utah State lost to Nevada at home by 14. Utah State went to Colorado State, lost by 20. So the power ratings for these teams is growing stronger on the Aztecs. It's getting worse on the Aggies. And we flipped this line 9 points from the prior meeting in favor of Utah State. No way. I understand I am going against the way this college basketball season has broke out, but you have to be able to pick your spots, and I think this is one of them. Give me San Diego State +2 tonight against Utah State. That line has moved a bit, I think, up now to 2.5, maybe even 3.5, depending on where you do your shopping. And then 2 player props. We mentioned the quick pick, Julian Reese, under 13.5 points. This is pretty simple when you look at Julian Reese and his performances for the Maryland Terps. I understand he's overall been playing better basketball, but you have to look at the opponents and how these certain teams check in. Like, he had a good game against Rutgers, right, who has the second best defense in the country according to KenPom, but they're inside the top 50 in tempo, 150 in tempo. This is a Wisconsin team that is as slow as any in college basketball outside of the 320s in tempo. I believe they're 321. Wisconsin also bolsters a top 40 defense. Wisconsin is just also, for me, the second best team in this conference. I know that maybe all the rankings don't agree with that, but that's exactly what I think you get from this Wisconsin Badgers. I think only Purdue is better. I know Wisconsin's not playing as good a ball, but this is a team that is too good and too slow for Julian Reese. You look at the games against Michigan State, all under. He didn't score against Purdue, and that's what I think the level is here for Wisconsin. So give me under 13.5 points for Julian Reese. And then for Yves Missy, who is the big man for the Baylor Bears, give me over 5.5 rebounds for the freshman center. If you look, he's missed this in 2 consecutive, has not missed it in 3 straight all season long. So a clear and obvious bounce back spot for us, 2-0 in this spot all year. He's been pretty good at not even missing this prop in 2 games in a row. And we're getting this at +120. By the way, he averages 6.3 rebounds per game on the road. Does Missy, which is obviously huge, considering that is more than a full rebound more than what he averages at home. Steps up on the road, but also the Big 12 is a pretty slow conference. If you look, I don't think they have any teams inside the top 50 in tempo, and they only have 2 teams inside the top 100. And BYU is the second fastest team in the Big 12, so we get a couple of more possessions here. It's a big-time total, right, in the 150s tonight between BYU and Baylor. Certainly high-quality offenses, both ranking inside the top 10. But give me Yves Missy over the 5.5 rebounds here. I think it's a nice spot at plus money to round out our college basketball card. What we're going to do, though, is throw it over to Davis Maddock, who's been hooking us up with these soccer SGPs, keeping it with the Champions League, Arsenal in action. Here's a look from Davis Maddock, same-game parlay style.
All right, guys, we are back for another same-game parlay. Over on the FanDuel Sportsbook, we continue to wait for the National Basketball Association to return, so we're going to go with a Wednesday afternoon same-game parlay in the UEFA Champions League. We have Porto traveling to play against Arsenal. That is Portugal versus England in the last 16, the first leg here in the Champions League. We are going to take Arsenal on the money line. We are also going to take over 2.5 goals. I think this actually should be a fairly exciting game. Both of these two teams are better offensively than they are defensively. We might even be treated to a 41-year-old center back starting for Porto in this spot. And then our third leg is going to be Starboy Bukayo Saka to have 2 or more shots on target. The important part there is on target, not just shots in general. This 3-leg same game parlay on Wednesday afternoon is going to give us plus 684 odds, Arsenal money line, over 2.5 goals in the match, and Bukayo Saka to record 2 or more shots on target in this game. Expecting some Arsenal domination on Wednesday afternoon. Good luck, everybody.
All right, appreciate the breakdown there from Davis Maddox. Same game parlay style. To re-rack it once more, we've got the Creighton Blue Jays plus 3.5. We've got the San Diego State Aztecs plus 2. Yves Messi, big man for the Baylor Bears, over 5.5 rebounds. And Julian Reese, the big man for the Maryland Terps, under 13.5 points. Joining us a bit early here is Dave Sharapan, who will be on In-Game Live tonight. Consig, appreciate you stopping by. Can I just start with this? Am I insane for betting a ranked road dog against an unranked home favorite?
I don't think so. I don't think so at all. Which game in particular are you mentioning?
I'm rocking with San Diego State tonight against Utah State.
That's a good game. I think that's a coin flip game. I mean, really, there's no strong side either way. But no, I don't think it's unreasonable. Listen, this is February basketball. I don't think it. Do you like that game to go over or under? How's that play out?
I couldn't get a good read on the total, but also too, Dave, I think you can kind of talk to this, right? Like, you know, Donnie showed me, and every place is different, but Donnie looked somewhere, he said 80% of the tickets were on Utah State. You know, these ranked road dogs, they're not the public side anymore because everybody knows, especially this year, college hoops. These teams everyone's betting home teams now.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not a big fan of those percentages. Most of them are fake, K-Dub. Right. So I don't use those as the handicap. Use the rebounding numbers. Use the defensive efficiency numbers. Don't use those betting numbers. Those are. And look, those
you know me. I'm not Publix where. Oh, give me the other side. I don't like that. I'm just trying to say is
the trend is on. People, everybody knows it.
Yes. It's not surprising anymore, except for the outdated announcers who are still somehow calling these games. I'll be wrong. Utah State will win. They'll go, whoa, shocker here by the Aggies, and I'm going to lose my mind.
Right. There shouldn't be a storm the court or any of that stuff. Like if they win, it's not a surprise. Listen, the content space uses a lot of information. They all use the same stuff. So it makes perfect sense. If that's the one you want to fade, there's a couple other games we'll get to on the other side that I think will be good spots for you.
Yeah, there'll be some good stuff here. It's going to be a big night on In-Game Live. We'll keep breaking it down here on Game Time Decisions.
Came back. They did have a couple of transfers here. The reality is UConn is every bit as talented and dangerous as they were 1 year ago.
If there's a guy, Joe Ranieri, that for one game could take a bunch of cast-offs and steal a game, his name's Eric Spoelstra.
Game Time Decisions, only on SportsGrid.
Johnny's a 19-point lead late in the opening half, only to squander that lead. Hall ball under Shaheen Holloway coming all the way back.
All these guards start jacking up shots, and then Fiorio doesn't get the ball. Hey, Rick, how about stop throwing your kids under the bus and get your big man the ball, your best player, play inside out like you were doing earlier in the game, and you probably would have won.
The early line, only on SportsGrid.
Your gut says Miami is going to win, and you should take the over. Your gut also said your NFT selfies would only go up in value. They didn't. But your head is on SportsGrid and knows the QB is in concussion protocol. The backup has a 45 QBR against the zone coverage. The New York D has the most sacks in the league. So yeah, trust your head. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
I'm sort of starting to figure out where these Canadian guys play well, bro. Not Hawaii, not California. Give me a Canadian in Ohio, Cam. Give me a Canadian in Michigan. Give me a Canadian at the Waste Management.
good old Charlie Hoffman, the representative of Waste Management, played the best tournament of his life in the 8 years and lost in a playoff to the Canadian. It turned out to be like a wicked tournament. Shout out to Nick Taylor, gave BC's finest.
Sports Rage Late Night. Only on SportsGrid. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid. Your 24/7 sports wagering network. The early line.
Magical and historic season in Lincoln, Nebraska continues.
He is the best player in the NBA, but also in the biggest moments where the national media is watching.
Newswire.
Something that we have never seen happen before with one of the iconic coaches in the game.
Pharrell Coast to Coast.
The team covers. It's automatic. It's every time. Not sometimes. It's every time.
Game time decisions.
Luka is actually far more dangerous from three on the road this year than at home.
This game here tonight, you may want to consider taking as many points as humanly possible.
In-game live. Prime time.
We got not one, but two coaches fired systems in place.
Sports Rage
This
Late
sort of
Night.
has letdown written all over it. It's going to be hard to match the emotion that they played with the other night.
It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
We're live. It's Game Time Decisions. I promise I'm in a great mood. Because that's true. I actually am. But Dave asked me, because Dave listens to me and he knows I've been dabbling more and more in the hockey.
Yes.
I just want to. I figure it's good for you. It's good for me. So why not? I had a hockey look tonight. I didn't bet it. Probably because I didn't bet. So I bet Braden Point last night for the assist. He scored instead of the assist. That was upsetting. So my look was Carter Verhaeghe for an assist, which was plus 120. And 19 seconds into Panthers Senators, he had an assist. And I certainly didn't bet it, Dave, so we're not doing great. We're not doing great.
My goodness.
That's tough. That's not how you draw it up. It's not right.
I mean, if you start to dabble in these player props in the NHL, I think you got to stick with it. Your stick-to-itiveness is good with this. I think
it's key.
You find a little something there to continue to kind of look at. I like that because you don't get too – you keep the tunnel vision where it needs to be. I think you got to trust the process.
I got it. All right, we got to reset Dave. What a wild – this is what happens when I ask Dave to sign in early. It's all good. I shouldn't have looked at that. I really shouldn't have looked at Carter. How does he get an assist 19 seconds in? It's fine. It's fine. I wouldn't have bet it big. It's hockey. It's all good. It's all good. There's nothing to worry about. I have a quick question, Consig, so I can switch topics, but I'll stick on the hockey.
Yes.
Do people typically fade teams off the Stadium Series, or it doesn't apply? Because right now, the other three games that are all live are all teams that were in the series.
Right. I think what you see a lot of times when you get a standalone game like that, the team that wins gets more action. The team that loses kind of gets forgotten about. The Islanders on the road against the Penguins. I watched the entire Penguin game on Sunday. Been watching a lot of their games. I feel like we're seeing the end of the empire. And there's talk of them maybe trading some big names, whether it's Carlson or Malkin. They blew a 1-0 lead to the Kings late. I saw them favored today and thought Islanders got to be live. That game's a dead under. So far, so good. I mean, the Penguins are winning, but the Islanders are right there. The Rangers make sense because of the Stars game yesterday. And that game has an over feel to it, too. So we're on over. I need more goals in that one. But the Stadium Series was a big deal. Not just in the New York City metro area. That was a big deal, and I think it was a huge success for the NHL.
Mm-hmm.
And those uniforms were tremendous. Those Ranger jerseys were great. I loved them.
Yeah. Look, the double up is probably smart because it's then more of an event, right? You miss the first, you catch the second kind of thing. I don't know. You'll know better than me. I mean, can they do something at the link And could they but that would be, they can't do the Link and then Hines and make it a Pennsylvania thing. They're so
next
far,
one,
it's not even like.
They announced that they're going to do it in Columbus. They've been talking about doing a Pennsylvania one at Penn State, at Beaver Stadium, and making it 100,000. They're going to do that in Columbus instead. They're going to do. They announced.
Ohio State
over the weekend. Columbus at home against Detroit. Apparently, they'll sell out the building. 110,000, most viewed hockey game ever. Stadium Series is booming. Business is happening for the NHL, especially during the week that the NBA is off. Everybody's watching it. More people are betting it this week than maybe have bet it all season, Kevin.
Well, yeah, look, you have to take advantage of these spots here, right? Like, I think, and college basketball probably doesn't care, but, to some degree, yesterday was a huge letdown for them, right? You end up, and you can't just be like, we can't control who's ranked. You only had 3 games that involved the power conferences on the slate. 2 from the Big 12, 1 from the ACC. And the ACC game included Virginia. And we all know that's not a real basketball team. I don't know what that is. All right? So, and again, to what Dave's talking about there, it's not just about ratings, right? Because obviously that's one way to look at it. But and I'm talking about to the people who are at home watching or driving around listening to this. If you bet on something, you're more inclined to watch it. And listen, if you're someone who likes to bet for fun, you're usually an NBA bettor, you're usually an NFL bettor. Like, look, I want to get in the mix. What do I have? And you're not going to go and bet the Patriot League. You're not going to go and bet the A-10. You want to bet on professional sports or you want to bet on high-level college basketball. So you're right, Dave. This is a big little opportunity here for the NHL. And I'll tell you another thing. And this is up to the sports books. I know sometimes for you this isn't your favorite, the odds boost, but odds boosts get people invested, especially if they win. And
no doubt.
If you can give people hockey boosts that they're going to win on, guess what happens when the NBA comes back on Thursday? They're like, whoa, where's my hockey boost? Let me get involved with the Ranger game. That's just how it works, Dave. We know that for the bettors.
No question. And that's all part of the process. It's not only, educating, but it's also entertaining. And if you can get them in with something like, you talking about an assist prop or a goal prop or number of goals in the first period and, boost a couple games together, that works. I mean, the marketing part of that for the books, that absolutely works, K-Dub. So, there's a lot of good hockey games tonight. This is a really slate, I think, as far as sides. A couple totals jumped out to me. I got the King stuff on because they're finishing up a road trip in Columbus tonight. Them in regulation feels like the easiest play on the board tonight. But, again, they still got to play the games, but I'm just putting that out there just because I know that, you might be up late at night back east and you might need a little dance partner for something that you may have going on later. So, Kings in regulation.
I like the look. Let me ask you something, Dave. There's some college football news. And, I actually want to ask you about something. I'll try and do both. Let me switch topics. I know I'm interrupting myself, but you and I, we do college football. We're going to get lost. People today are talking about Justin Fields. And I don't know if you were ever booking odds for the next team, right? But all of a sudden the Falcons are now minus 130. Explain to people. The Falcons are minus 130 because a bet came in or because somebody in the room heard something, saw something, and said, I got to move this number?
Option number 2. They're totally guessing. Maybe somebody bet it, but more often than not, those situations, as fluid as that moved, and that happened today, this morning, while we were on, me and Matt were on BVB, and he said to me, they just moved that. I was like, right now? So he unfollowed the Bears, so he can't come back. That's apparently what everybody's saying. Unfollowed the Bears on socials. Atlanta became the favorite because he followed a couple people. If we're starting to move odds on who's following who on what social medias, that's a little bit alarming. But the talk is him going to Pittsburgh, Kevin. It's nighttime in Pittsburgh behind me. The Steelers. Do you think that's a better fit? I mean, that price is crazy. Plus 350? Plus 4 in some places?
So we had a breakdown yesterday, though, with Joe Lisi about the Steelers becoming the favorites for Russell Wilson. And, to some degree, I wonder if that's just people going, well, you got to go somewhere. That doesn't really feel like a move the Steelers are going to make. I don't feel like they're going to bring in Russ to unseat Kenny Pickett. I don't. That doesn't seem like something that Mike Tomlin is interested in. I don't really know what Tomlin's interested in is being over 500. And I'm telling you, it's one of these things, Dave. Tomlin's in a weird spot. He's too good to bottom out. But the Steelers seem like they could really use a season where they bottom out or make a huge swing at the quarterback spot. This guy Kirk Cousins is about to be a free agent. And I know that's not really the Steelers' MO. But this team cannot keep floating at this quarterback position because you know it. Big Ben towards the back end still was not a high-level quarterback. High-level name.
No. Could
still get the job done, every so often. But even that was impressive that Tomlin was having that Big Ben. What were they? Remember they were 11-0 and everybody knew they weren't all that good?
Yeah. Thanks for bringing that up on a Tuesday. I appreciate that. But we were betting against them too. That's fine.
Yeah. How it goes.
What's the other subject you want to talk about? Because that's one, but what else is there?
So they announced their format officially today, the 5+7. And Ben Stevens, right, early line, tweeted out using the national championship odds, a projected bracket, right, based on how the buys work, based on who's favored where. So you notice the top four, Georgia, Ohio State, Florida State, we jump down to Utah or Kansas State. Kansas State and Utah are the two highest priced teams from the Big 12, right? But they're nowhere near the top end mix, right? Then underneath that, you have what will be your opening round, 5-12, 6-11, 7-10, 8-9. And those are at-larges plus the lowest ranked power team. And what I think is incredible is if we pop that back up, you'll see it says, and this is putting Dave and I against one another, Notre Dame, Penn State, / in that 11 spot. And the reason Ben did that is they are both 25-1, and there's only one available spot based on the automatic bids. Despite the fact that they have better odds comfortably than obviously Liberty or even a Big 12 champion, they're going to be left out. So it's going to get really interesting, Dave, and I don't know when the markets are going to be comfortable enough booking these. Obviously, they needed to wait for confirmation on the format today, but the make-miss college football playoff odds are about to be fascinating, I think, for odds makers.
It's going to be really difficult because it's never been done before with 12, and now that the rules are what they are, really only the conference winners, okay, but the at-large bids, you're going to see volatility in that market, K-Dub, that you've never seen before. There's going to be plays on teams weeks before it actually happens based on speculation on, well, let's play this out. They're going to be a money line favorite here, and a pick 'em here. I'm going to bet them now because if they win, and get to that last game, well, I already got a number. You want to talk about getting closing line value. There's going to be people taking shots at this thing in October. They're going to start even in September. You're going to really start to see some great stuff. We're going to have something to talk about all fall, not just winning their conference, not just to win it all, just to make the play. That's going to be a great market. That's an awesome market to put up.
But let me tell you this, okay? And this is what's going to get interesting. You look there, 12 spots, 10 went to either the SEC or the Big Ten. I'm setting the stage now. I am not sure that is realistic. I am not sure that those teams can beat up on each other and all get in. And I'll just make this example. LSU, with the Heisman Trophy winner, awful winner, everybody should see my way by now, would have not made a 12-team format last year because they had 3 losses. They only got beat out by a number of teams. So it's all going to be really interesting. Consig, appreciate it as always. We've got people, their college best bets on the other side.
Caravan came back. They did have a couple of transfers here. The reality is UConn is every bit as talented and dangerous as they were 1 year ago.
If there's a guy, Joe Ranieri, that for one game could take a bunch of cast-offs and steal a game, his name's Eric Spoelstra.
Game time decisions. Only on SportsGrid.
Johnny's a 19-point lead late in the opening half, only to squander that lead. Haul ball under Shaheen Holloway, coming all the way back.
All these guards start jacking up shots, and then Fiorio doesn't get the ball. Hey, Rick, how about stop throwing your kids under the bus and get your big man the ball, your best player, play inside out like you were doing earlier in the game, and you probably would have won.
The early line. Only on SportsGrid.
Your gut says Miami is going to win, and you should take the over. Your gut also said your NFT selfies would only go up in value. They didn't. But your head is on SportsGrid and knows the QB is in concussion protocol. The backup has a 45 QBR against the zone coverage. The New York D has the most sacks in the league. So yeah, trust your head. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
I'm sort of starting to figure out where the Canadian guys play well, bro. Not Hawaii, not California. Give me a Canadian in Ohio, Kev. Give me a Canadian in Michigan. Give me a Canadian at the Waste Management.
Good old Charlie Hoffman, the representative of Waste Management, played the best tournament of his life in 8 years and lost in a playoff to the Canadian. It turned out to be like a wicked tournament. Shout out to Nick Taylor, gave BC's finest.
Sports Rage Late Night. Only on SportsGrid. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid. Your 24/7 sports wagering network. The early line.
Magical and historic season in Lincoln, Nebraska continues.
He is the best player in the NBA, but also in the biggest moments where the national media is watching.
Newswire.
Something that we have never seen happen before with one of the iconic coaches in the game.
Pharrell coast to coast.
The team covers. It's automatic. It's every time. Not sometimes. It's every time.
Game time decisions.
Luka is actually far more dangerous from three on the road this year than at home.
This game here tonight, you may want to consider taking as many points as humanly possible.
In-game live. Prime time.
We got not one, but two coaches fired systems in place.
Sports Rage
This
Late
sort
Night.
of has letdown written all over it. It's going to be hard to match the emotion that they played with the other night.
It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
Closing out, a little game time decisions. Up next will be in-game live. Dave Sharapan joined by Scott Wetzel, so make sure you're tuned in all night long here on SportsGrid. Let's get the people a best bet. If I had to narrow it down to one, because we still have 4 more picks upcoming on the college board. Nice start with Iowa Hawkeyes. They've flipped to a live favorite, actually, in their game against Michigan State. But it is a side. It's San Diego State plus the 2. Mountain West action, I get it. Ranked, road, dog, not what we are supposed to do this college hoop season. I think this has gone too far. The last time these teams played, San Diego State was a 6.5-point favorite in a game they won by 14. They're now catching as much as 2.5, a 9-point line swing because of home court advantage. That's not how this works. This is overinflated here with people coming in on Utah State when the Aztecs have proven since that last meeting they are comfortably the better basketball team. Beaten Colorado State, beaten New Mexico. Yeah, they had an overtime loss to Nevada. Guess what? Utah State played Nevada at home, lost by 14. Played Colorado State on the road, lost by 20. If Utah State can step up here tonight, good form. But there's value on San Diego State, who should be booked as a favorite in this basketball game. The other side that I'm on, me Creighton. Plus 3.5 at home against UConn. The Huskies are better. The Huskies are rightfully booked as the favorite in this game. I do think the 3.5 is a bit strong, though. And I think it's a bad spot for UConn. They just won by 28 points against a top team in Marquette. It is maybe the single best performance any team has put on all season long. And that's what they're going to need to do now for what I think, when you consider opponent and location, is their actual toughest test of the year at Creighton. Give me Creighton to step up here and the UConn Huskies to not step up. Give me the Blue Jays plus 3.5. Props-wise, Eve Messi of Baylor over 5.5 rebounds, and then Julian Reese of Maryland under 13.5 points. Good luck. I'm Kevin Walsh. We'll see you next time. Game Time Decisions.